Since the inception of Survivor, nearly, 25 years ago, outwit, outplay, and outlast has been the ongoing mantra. Last week, we talked about the outwit portion of Survivor. And this week, we're going to talk about outplaying, specifically how that relates to the challenges in Survivor. Welcome. This is the Idle Talk podcast. My name is Peyton, and I'm joined by my friend Jacob. How are you doing today, Jacob?
Pretty good. Had a friend's birthday party last night, so that was fun, and started my judo job in a few days, which is pretty exciting. So I feel like I'm starting to become a real adult. So it's pretty crazy. How are you, Jen?
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, no, I'm doing well-ish. I witnessed a hit and run today. So that was interesting. Would you like to hear about what that was, or should I just leave it at I witnessed a hit and run?
No, I think you need to elaborate that.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a hit and run on like a person outside of a car, but it was a hit and run on a car. So like dude hit a car, drove off. But there's more to it than just that. So what happened? Driving down the road, 3-lane road. I'm in the far left lane. Traffic, the speed on this road, the speed limit is 45. We're all moving like 30, 35. We're not even up at the speed limit. There's quite a bit of traffic. And I see in my rearview mirror this like old raggedy like tan Volkswagen Jetta, like gotta be like 2004. I could probably look at the models online and find one that looks pretty close. It's old, but it's coming up really fast. The fastest I've ever seen a car on this road go, gotta be like over 60 miles an hour. It was going so incredibly fast, coming up behind me, and I'm kind of scared because I think he's just gonna run into me. But I hold my course. I'm just kind of bracing. He goes around me, weaves, flies by like so fast. It's hard for me to explain how fast this dude flew by me. It was so fast. Continues to weave around cars, and gets in front of the car that's in front of me, and ahead of us is a red light. And so I don't know where bro thought he was going, but he's going way over the speed, like double the speed of everybody else, and slams on his brakes because it's a red light and there's traffic in front of him. Does not stop in time and hits the back of a white Tesla, which is probably the worst car to hit in this scenario because one, it's a Tesla driver, and two, that thing's got cameras all around it.
I was about to say,
you know that they caught that.
Yeah.
So that happens, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, that was crazy. I was like, what? Like, I was like, oh, I'm just having to get around. There's like, now it's going to be an accident, this sort of thing. The Tesla driver, she gets out of her car. She walks around. She looks at him, does this like, what the heck, sort of like very clearly motion, like, what are you doing? Driver opens up the door to his car, gets out, is standing quite a bit taller than her. He's a tall guy, and like yells, like full angry yells. I can't hear what he yells, but it scared her. She jumped back. He looked very angry, whatever. Got back in the car, slammed his door. The second that happened, the car in front of me drove around. Like, it got in a left turn lane, went around them. The light had turned green by this point. They didn't want any part of that. And in them doing that, now there's nothing between me and this crazy driver. He gets back in his car, and I see the reverse lights come on his car. And I'm like, frick, this dude's about to just ram right into me. So she gets out her phone and starts recording. I've already got mine out and I'm recording. I'm like, if this dude runs into me, I don't have a dash cam, but I'm ready. And so I'm sitting there recording. He backs up. I thought he was going to hit me. He didn't hit me. And then he like drives off. But I was able to zoom in, got the license plate number, and the car, the make, the model, all that. So I reported that to the police because I don't know if she got that information, but she ended up chasing him.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't know what happened beyond it. I had to turn into Chick-fil-A to get my lunch because my turn was coming up. But I don't know what happened. I ended up submitting it to the police as just like a tip. And I was like, here's the video and here's the license plate. I don't know if they got it. If they end up reporting it, here's evidence. So I stand with Tesla lady. I hope you get your car fixed. But that was eventful. I really I had just a moment of panic thinking he was going to back into me. And then part of me kind of wanted him to, because I've got him on video. I'm going to win and I'm going to make a lot of money. I was like, oh, I can sue. Like, oh, any lawyer will take this case any day. This is great. But also I was like, I don't really want to deal with that today. So I almost made a lot of money, but I also almost had a lot of problems. So I'll take no trouble beyond that. But that's how my morning went. Now that doesn't relate to Survivor at all, but I felt like it was worth mentioning because it's a pretty it was a pretty big deal. I've never witnessed that. I've witnessed a couple crimes in my life, but never never a little hit and run thing. So that was kind of crazy.
At least it wasn't a person. That would have been
Yeah,
worse if it was a person.
oh man, like that's one I had a teacher in high school that witnessed a hit and run on a person, and he told us about it, and I just can't even imagine like how traumatizing that would be. Like
Yeah,
he
that'd be
witnessed
scary.
someone like they were like jaywalking, and just got hit by a car moving full speed, and like just got clipped like down like on the ground, had to bring an ambulance, and he was there, and like I was like I can't imagine that. That would be pretty crazy. So yeah, luckily it wasn't that. And I guess luckily for the driver, they drive a Tesla, so they definitely have a lot of evidence. And then I got the license plate and submitted it. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I'll keep you updated if the police contact me further. Maybe I'll get a cash reward. That'd be kind of fun.
Did you tell the police they could like contact you about like if they figure anything out?
Yeah, I said I was like I don't mind giving more information. I was like I have a little bit of it on video. Gave him the video. We'll see. I don't know, but yeah, that was pretty crazy. Speaking of crazy, that's my best transition. But speaking of crazy, challenges in Survivor can be crazy. You like that? That was pretty
No,
good.
that was a bad transition.
No, but it's the best I got. In Survivor, it's a pretty common, normal thing is, there's challenges. It's been there since season 1. We recently watched season 1, and if you listened to the last episode, we were comparing the challenges in season 1 of Survivor to the challenges in season 45, the most recent season of Survivor. Or not challenges, the strategy portion. So this week we want to do it with the challenges, and I think the best place to start with that is really just to talk about the challenges in season 1, and then we can kind of compare those to this most recent season. So I'm wondering, Jacob, what challenges from season 1 are, in your mind, the most memorable? They don't have to be the best. They don't have to be the worst. They're just the ones that stick out in your mind when you think about challenges from season 1 of Survivor.
I think the most obvious memorable one is the Blair Witch, the Blair Witch Project challenge. It was really weird. They had to like go into the jungle, and it started off with a video of Jeff like filming himself with a camcorder being like, oh, they took me into the woods. This is the Survivor Blair Witch Project. And I was just like, this is so cringe, but so funny. And so then they go into the woods and have to Jeff starts off by telling them a bunch of trivia about the island of Survivor and where they are and kind of how the game has progressed. For instance, one of the things they said was every single person who had been voted out, their torch went out during tribal council. The wind had put out their torches during the tribal council, and so that was one of the clues. And so they had to go into the jungle and find these tiki masks that had questions on them and record themselves filming the answer. And I just think the most iconic part is Rudy going up to every single question, reading the question, and just being, I don't know.
Yeah,
and then move on to another
one
question.
of them.
Reading it, I don't know. It was so funny to watch.
Yeah, it was a really great moment. Yeah, they're running out there and they're answering trivia about like the islands, like the mythology of the island and the spiritual and like kind of nature of the island and what the legends of the island are and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely, it's interesting because I mean the Blair Witch Project, I googled it because I wasn't sure. Came out in 1999, so
really?
I guess it was a thing, right? So
I thought
it was a thing there at the moment.
Is there a remake that came out recently then? Because I thought
there was
like
one in like 2016 or something. But yeah, the original one I think is like 1999, and like I'm pretty sure that whole thing was like a found footage sort of like camcorder thing. I've not seen it.
Yeah,
but
I just know about
that this was a bit because it was popular. I don't know. It feels really out of place.
I know when the remake came out, it was like really big in pop culture because I feel like that was kind of around the time when creepypastas were a really big thing. I don't know if you know what that is. Do you know what that is?
I know like not well. I think I do, but I think I know like copy pastas. Like I know what
Mm.
like copy pasta is, but is creepypasta just a scary version of copy
Well, I don't
pasta?
know. I don't know what copypasta is.
The
So.
the copy pasta is like it's like a really long message that you copy and paste and send to people, and it's got like lots of emojis and
Oh.
all that sort of stuff, and it's
Okay.
like
Kind of. Yeah.
copy
So
pasta.
creepypasta is basically it was like a subreddit. I don't know if it was actually a subreddit, but the easiest way I can explain it being is a subreddit. So it was like a subreddit where people would tell scary stories and stuff like that. And Slenderman is something that started on creepypasta.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, so I remember. Okay, yes, then I remember. I remember a lot of the drama that came about out of Slender Man and like the girls
The girls
that
who killed their friend.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that whole thing. Yeah. I don't want to dive into that in this episode for fear of demonetization. But uh, one thing that we can't agree on though is that it's very weird to look back and see them do this Blair Witch Project challenge in
Yeah.
season 1 of Survivor. I kind of wonder if it felt weird then, or like if people were like
Yeah,
just
this
so
is
into
normal.
the Blair Witch Project, like it was everywhere, sort of thing. Like I don't know. I was a baby when the season came out. Spoiler alert. I'm not old enough to remember this. So I don't know if it was a big deal or not. I know the Blair Witch Project was a big cultural phenomenon, but it's very weird. It feels super out of place as a challenge here because that's one thing that if we're looking at the challenges from this season, like almost all of them had a theme, which you don't
Yeah.
see very often in Survivor today. I'd say probably if ever. And most of them were like they were themed kind of about the island, which are a few, but really it was just survival themed challenges. Like one that I remember was the like the rescue challenge. I don't
Yeah,
remember
that
what they
was really
called it,
cool.
but where I mean they just hung up tribe mates out on parachutes in the jungle, and they
Yeah,
had to
they
go
had to go
find
get
them
them.
and then bring them back on a stretcher. Like
Yeah,
it's
that was cool.
yeah, the show is about surviving, and they're trying to like it seemed for a while like they're trying to put them in like survival scenarios and stuff. And so I think that can also give us a clear picture of what they originally envisioned Survivor to be, is like people almost living out like a like survival as if they were like stranded on a desert island sort of thing, plus then the like voting out mechanic, so there was a winner. But I don't think that they were viewing it as strategic a game initially, based on the way the challenges were laid out, as they seemed, because of the theming, it seemed like they were going a different direction maybe.
Yeah. And the challenges were only sometimes not even 5 minutes of the episode. They
Oh
were
yeah,
they
so
were
little of it.
such a short portion because some of them only lasted not yeah, some of them were so incredibly short. I'm trying to remember which ones, like the archery one, the one where they had to shoot the bow and
Mm-hmm.
arrow into the palm fronds. That one was so short because
Well,
everyone
they
just
had
shot one arrow.
well no because they had it was three parts, right? They had the blow darts, the spear, and then the archery,
Well, no. They did
right?
that, but then they also had the one for the video message that
Oh yeah. Okay, so yes, I remember. So yeah, that was the one where Jenna really wanted it, and then
yes.
Greg took it, and we had
Yes.
to watch that horrendous video.
Yes.
Yeah. So then the other one, oh no, so the other one was blow dart, spear, and slingshot.
Slingshot.
That's what it was.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I
Or
thought that
javelin.
was kind of
It wasn't a
cool.
bow. It was a
Yeah.
javelin.
Yeah. So yeah, spear, javelin, whatever. Um, but so yeah, though those challenges are pretty interesting to me. They were very short, but it was interesting that they were using like these different things. We still do have like these target practice sort of challenges in Survivor.
But usually they're just always the big slingshots now.
Big slingshot or like ring toss or
Yeah.
ball and hoop
Mm-hmm.
are kind of the main ones. Or I guess they'll do like the throwing like the sandbags at like
Yeah.
blocks and stuff. But it's not the only tool that they really use now is the big slingshot. They're not using slingshots, bows and arrows, javelins, blow darts, definitely not. So
Yeah.
it
I almost
is interesting and different now,
yeah.
but similar
I
mechanic.
I almost wonder if it has to do with safety concerns, or they just feel that those portions of challenges are outdated. Maybe a combination of both.
Yeah, I'd say maybe a bit of both. I think it's also probably, my guess would be they want to make a challenge where as many people can participate and it be as equal a playing field usually as possible. And
Yeah.
like with those ones where they had the three different kinds, they were splitting up the tribe. Like some did the blow dart, some did the spear, some did slingshot based on whoever was better at it. And I think like having those things around, like they're more, they require a little bit more skill than a big slingshot does, or just throwing a ball or a ring toss. Like there are obviously people that are more skilled at it and do better in the challenges, and that's kind of like physical threats and all that sort of stuff. But in general, it's something that everyone can do, regardless of like their own personal experiences and background and whatever. They're
Yeah.
not, I don't think they're as skill based. That would be my main assumption, is that it's sort of trying to even the playing field and make it something that anyone can come into and do. You know, someone who's a super fan and knows these challenges exist, or someone who's never seen Survivor can go and pull a slingshot. You know, like I
Yeah.
think that's kind of probably the idea. I am curious when they make that transition. And that's going to be something really interesting to see as we're watching through all these seasons, like as they start redoing challenges, because we can already see elements of challenges today in season one. We can see some things that carry over. The one that comes to mind the most is the obstacle course physical race with like the green
Yeah.
berets. That challenge is
Also,
what most challenges look like now.
the Green Berets being there was so random.
Very
That's
weird.
So funny.
Didn't get that. But yeah, it was like the whole thing is that it was a military obstacle course was the thing.
Yeah.
And so in Survivor now, most challenges have an obstacle course of some kind. They have some bit of an obstacle course, whether it's like a really intense obstacle course or like a couple small obstacles. It's pretty normal that almost all, at least the like tribe challenges, have some sort of an obstacle course involved. And so you can see that starting here, but it has evolved.
And I think one of the big differences, I think, in terms of the challenges was them not being multi-phases, whereas it seemed like when one tribe would be in the lead, that was just the tribe that was going to win. Whereas in immunity challenges today, you can be in last place, and then once you get to the puzzle, you can win.
Yep.
So I think that's something that the new era does better, is giving every tribe a more fair chance, because if you're not a super physical tribe, you can win because you can do the puzzles really well. And so the challenges not being drawn out through different phases was really weird to see, because like, for instance, the first immunity challenge, when all they were doing was just lighting fires in a sequence till the very end, it was extremely straightforward. There was really no way for a tribe that was behind to catch up unless something happened to the tribe that was ahead, like they fell down or something. So to see how the challenges have progressed in that aspect, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's and that I think also comes back to the idea that we were talking about just a second ago with like leveling the playing field. It's the sort of thing where when you have basically, I think season one Survivor was very much like all the challenges were what now would be a leg of a challenge. And so they had a good idea in that they had an interesting leg, but you really needed a couple or more of them. So that way, because like you said, if you make a mistake, it's game over. Any mistake is the end. That's why, like in that first shot, I mean, that's why Sonia went home first, is because she fell and was being dragged along. And it's like, that can happen in Survivor today, and you can still recover. But here it was over. It didn't matter. There was no shot at possibly winning. So it requires like perfection to do well, and it's not as forgiving. And so I think Survivor today, it's a bit more forgiving on that aspect, but it also incorporates, like I said before, it incorporates multiple people. Like you might not be able to do the physical part really well, but you might be really good at the puzzles, or vice versa. Like the tribe can all contribute, usually in different ways, which makes it a lot more interesting to watch, because it typically results in more evenly matched tribes. But then you still also always have, it seems like at least in the last two seasons, a tribe that just loses every challenge, with Tika was it Lulu or Luvu?
Lulu.
Lulu, Tika and Lulu they just lost all of them. So
Yeah.
it's hard to.
I think that
I don't know.
also could be a fault of the producers just not balancing the tribes well. Because if you look at the tribes that started season 45, they're not very balanced. They're just not in terms of their physicality. It's very much not balanced.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't know about. I would agree with that for 44 probably. That Tika was just always at a disadvantage. I think I don't know about 45 though, because 45 had there were multiple quitters on Lulu, that really affected it. So
Yeah.
and then also just people who didn't want to be there. But I think maybe from a producer perspective, when you're looking at it, it looks more even than it was when it played out, because they had people on the tribe who just didn't want to be there, which was crazy. Which is why I feel like Sabaya just got absolutely shafted by Sean, deciding that he wanted to go home the episode after they voted her out, and she wanted to be there,
Yeah.
and Brandon didn't really want to play, and then I can't even remember the name of the chick who quitted at the beginning. So it's like Hannah, sure. I think that all contributed really heavily to Lulu losing as much as they did. I just don't think you can deny that. I will agree though, in 44 with Tika, they were a pretty weak tribe, just in general. But I don't know if they expected that. I think when you look at all those the Tika 3, they made it all the way to the end. So they were strong as a tribe. They just weren't ever unified, the whole thing, which is that plays a big part into it too, is the tribe dynamics. You could have the most physical, strong tribe of all time and lose every challenge because you're not on the same page. So I think that happens a lot too.
An aspect of challenges that I think has been lost from 1 to 45 though is a big portion of the mental outplay, which kind of falls into the outwit category, but more in just being able to win mental challenges, because there are a portion of almost every immunity challenge that's a puzzle, which is great, but most people can do puzzles. Once you watch a lot of episodes of Survivor, a lot of the puzzles are pretty similar, and so the puzzles are
Carson
definitely
figured out.
Yeah, exactly. But something that I really liked in season 1 that I wish they would keep doing was the challenge where you had to answer questions about the people on the jury. I think that's a really, really cool challenge, because what's crazy though is that Kelly won that and still she didn't. And Richard was the worst at it. Yeah. And still Richard won and Kelly got second. But I think it's a really cool challenge because you can prove that you really cared about the people that you were out there with. So I think it's a really cool challenge. And I also really liked the island trivia challenge where they did trivia questions about Borneo. I like the idea that that one was more of just a reward challenge. It does seem maybe a little skewed if you try to do it as an immunity challenge, because obviously there are just people who have more natural, better memories and intelligence than some people. But I would really like to see more kind of brainy challenges, just because I really like trivia and things like that. So if I went out on Survivor, I think I would kill those challenges. But I really like those challenges, and I'm kind of bummed that they don't really do them anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and so I agree with your point. I think that I agree. I like when they did the trivia for reward. I think the trivia at the end about the jury, I think I like doing that and seeing how observant you are and how much you cared about the people and that sort of thing. I don't love that being for immunity, as much as I would like. I think you should be rewarded for having learned all that stuff, but I don't think you should be rewarded with immunity for that, especially at the end of the game. I think that puts a little too much on that, because, like we said, Richard won the game without knowing any of that stuff. You don't need to know those things to be a good player or to have good relationships. But it is really interesting to see, from a viewer perspective, to see what people latched onto. Like the fact that Kelly knew Jenna's kids' first and middle names.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, great. I mean, they're out there 24/7 together, and I'm sure they became close. But that's just something that, like, I don't know if I'd remember that. I'd have a
Yeah.
hard time maybe remembering her kids' names. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, I mean, if she was talking about them a lot, I'm sure I'd remember. But that's just the sort of thing that, like, I'd remember. Okay, she has 2 girls. But yeah, I don't know. It is something that I agree. I think trivia challenges are cool, and I'd like to see them have a comeback. What about like the physical challenges, especially at the end, or like, because we've talked a lot about like the tribal challenges. So maybe for just a second, I'd like to talk about like the individual immunity challenges and how those are a little different now,
Yeah.
and then we can take a break after that, and then we can come back and talk about like rewards,
Yeah.
reward challenges more specifically. But something that, I mean, Survivor is, I think something that Survivor does really well are these really cool solo immunity challenges at the end that,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes can go on, for whole days. Like that, like there's some really intense ones that'll happen now. I mean, definitely hours and hours, and they're really difficult and physically demanding and stuff. We see some of those kind of them starting here. So like there's the endurance, like walking the plank one where they stand like out in the water on the balance beam and it gets smaller over time.
Yeah.
That's a mechanic we have today where they're doing something and whatever they're standing on gets smaller. It's not Jeff physically walking out into the water and removing a 2x4
Mm-hmm.
each time, but they move and progressively get smaller, or things progress and get harder. Um, and then like the endurance at the end, like holding onto the stick or like the pole. We have endurance challenges. They're a bit more physically demanding than that. That one's, I mean, it's pretty simple for what we get today, but we definitely see the starting points of what we currently have as individual immunity. All that to say, what did you think about the individual immunity challenges in this first season? Were there any that you'd like to see a comeback besides like that, the trivia reward one, or
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that in general?
I think I agree with your point. We kind of start to see the beginning roots of what becomes the modern day individual immunity challenge. For instance, one that we had, I think it was last season, one that they did last season, where you have to be under the grates as the tide is coming in. You have to hold your breath. And
Yeah,
season
that was
one, they did.
44, I think, was when they had that.
I think they didn't. Did they do it in 45 too? Okay. Well, they
No,
okay. They
because
definitely didn't.
I know they didn't, because I remember because Katura was in 45, and I just don't think they
Mhm.
would have ever done that challenge with her.
So I know in season one they do where you just have to hold your breath as long as you
Yep.
can. So that kind of beginning route of that challenge I think is there. So it's cool to see that things that they started to do in season one still carry over to 45. But I think a lot of these challenges are just significantly less intense than the
Yeah.
ones that we see today. That the great one, I would have a panic attack so fast in that.
It's it's
I know
legit. It's tough. Yeah.
I know that would be a challenge that I would do absolutely horrible at. And then there are just some challenges that are just super random, like the one where you had to stand on the tiles and then move and then flip the tile over, and you had to be kind of the last one with tiles left. I personally, I don't think that one really requires much skill at all. And
I
I think,
think, I mean, it's a strategy. It's it's a strategy game.
but I think you
It's like
also, you
chess,
can,
sort of.
yeah, but you can, I think you can get an advantage based on where your starting position is. I think some contestants have better starting positions than others, but I think it's still a cool challenge. It's just kind of weird, and just probably not weird in the context of watching it for the first time, but definitely very weird in the context of the challenges that we have today. And then we kind of also see the first roots of the endurance challenges, like you were talking about, where you stand on the plank and the planks get shorter, and then the one where they have to hold on to the totem pole as long as they can. But again, it's just, they're just so much less intense than the ones that we have today. So standing on
Yeah.
a plank is significantly less intense than ones where you have to hold your hand over your head, or you're supporting a ball on a post, or you have to hold a totem on a ginormous pole. Things like that, I think you see the roots of the endurance challenges, but the endurance challenges are just taken to a whole other level in these new seasons.
Yeah. I will say, before we kind of move on to rewards, one thing that I really liked, and I would love to see come back, but I just imagine it's far too expensive, but I thought was really cool, was the, I think it was like the out on a limb sort of one. It was the jungle like ropes course
Yeah,
thing.
that was really cool.
Was super cool. And I can't imagine that it already existed wherever they were filming. Maybe it did, but I feel like, I mean, they had to, I think they built that for the show, would just be my assumption. And it's like a huge ropes course. And they had to get like, was it like 15 or 18 like little trinkets and stuff? Like, it was pretty intense and required, a lot of running and fast. It was really interesting. It was shot weird just because it was older and it was like hard to really follow. And that's something that maybe we can talk about that too a little later, is like the narration of challenges too is non-existent in season 1. But I think the idea of like this ropes course and the way it was done, it was just so different from anything we have today. Like, I thought that was super, super cool. And I thought that was really fun.
I'm trying to remember the last season that they did it, but I know one of the seasons that I've seen that you haven't, they did something similar, was in Cambodia, the second chance season. I don't remember the last time they've done it, but they did a super similar challenge in Cambodia where it's not a ropes course, but I think it's probably the closest thing to what they did. And it's honestly a really cool challenge, and I want them to bring it back because I really like it for a final. I believe they did it for final immunity or the challenge before final immunity. So basically what they had was they had this kind of semicircle that fans out to a bunch of different stations. And so they would have to go to the station and complete that portion of the ropes obstacle course to grab a puzzle piece bag and then bring it back to the main station. And so each station was different. One of them was you had to go across a tightrope with ropes hanging down to support you. One of them was you had 3 boards to make a bridge. So you would have to place one and then go behind you, pick up the other one and keep placing them to make a bridge. Other ones are just kind of steps across. So pretty a more modernized version of what we had, but still one of the really cool challenges that I think when you see it, you'll probably be like, oh, I can see how they took influence from this first challenge.
Yeah. And then I guess before the last thing before we move on is I just want to mention it because I think it's so funny, but the challenge directly before the ropes course where it's like the Carabiner challenge where they're on the lines and they're running, they're going through, and like Jervis just dominated it. But Greg
just says
cutting back and currently lost. That was one of my favorite bits of the whole season, was that he was lost the whole time. And instead of like in a current season where Jeff would be narrating and be saying, bro, what are you doing? He's still lost, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just text popping up at the bottom of the screen. I thought that was really funny. And one of the better comedic moments in the show, and it was like production, not even like the people, the cast. It was really funny. And that's in episode 8. If you want to see, go watch it, see it. That was in episode 8 of season 1. But it's really funny and cool. But so like those two challenges were kind of ropes-y sort of things, and kind of look a little bit like challenges we get today, and at least in the theory of what they are. And so we can definitely see the start of modern Survivor all the way back in season 1, which I think is really cool. So, and as for the one area that has changed a lot is rewards. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about rewards in Survivor, and if rewards now suck, and why they were better back then.
Yes.
So we'll be right back with that here in just a second.
So I think one thing that I really liked about reward challenges than season 1 was how some of them are really cultural to the area that they're in. So the one where Kelly got to go out to a bar, granted it's with Jeff and she's seeing the real reward is that she's going to a bar to hang out with Jeff, get a meal, and see the promo for Survivor. But it's really cool that she got to go to a local village, a local bar, interact with the local people and see the culture. I think that was really cool. And I know they do it a lot in later seasons where they'll take them on trips to a waterfall where they can go cliff jumping, or they take them through ruins of a temple that are in the local area. I think rewards like that are really cool and something that I wish they would continue doing. But since they're in Fiji constantly, I just don't think they really have the opportunity to do that, because then it would just be the same thing over and over again, which probably would get a little boring. But I think something that's really cool is the kind of cultural rewards that you can get, and something that I wish that they would continue to do. But I think that's just a product of them being in the same place every time now.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the experience rewards are something they don't do anymore, and I think are really cool, where it was like, the helicopter tour, or getting, like, they did do that in the most recent season.
Yeah, I think
that was a cool one. They kind of brought that back, which was cool. Because I remember you hit Austin and D and all that sort of stuff. But so it was nice that they brought that back. But the going out and spending the night on a yacht, that's a pretty cool. And then having, your dad's there and hanging out with him, like, that's a really cool reward.
Yeah.
And so I definitely agree. Those sort of things where you're getting to do stuff more than just get food is cool. But I kind of disagree with your thought that if they did it every season, because it's Fiji, it might get old. Because, I mean, right now, they just go to the sanctuary every time.
Yeah.
Like, they're already doing the same thing every season, and it's getting old. But what makes it still interesting is that the people going on these things are different each time, so it makes it interesting. Like, I probably would never get tired of a couple people going out to a yacht every season. Like, if they went out and got a night at a yacht, that also probably become a super sought after reward, and you could make it a really hard challenge because people would really want that. You get food, you get to sleep in a bed, you get to take a shower, like that sort of stuff. Like, I think that those are really cool rewards that are more than just a food boost, but like really a morale booster. I do think, though, probably the bigger reason why they don't do it, especially in this new era of Survivor, is just time. They're not out there enough days for it to be worth it. I mean, if they're out there for an extra 12 days, then maybe, it becomes, those sort of rewards are necessary to keep morale up. But now people aren't out there enough for it to, I guess, for them to think it's worth it on a production side. But I will say, and this is probably, I think, where most of our conversation is going to go, is that I feel like today rewards just aren't ever worth it anymore.
No, I mean,
or are rarely worth it, I guess.
Yeah, if you look at the rewards in 45, you have to point out the obvious of the rotisserie chicken, which was so comically bad. Everyone on Survivor Twitter and TikTok was just roasting the crap out of that reward and how just uninteresting it was. The fact that 3 people got to share a single rotisserie chicken, not even have plates or utensils. They were just digging at it with their bare hands. And no drinks. They probably had water, but they didn't give them beers or Cokes or anything like they usually do. Just a straight up rotisserie chicken that you could get at Publix, which is just...
That's the thing where, and that's where I think that is, it speaks to an area where I think Survivor is struggling the most right now. And I think also could be an indicator as to why this season had 2.5 quitters, 2 people that quit and 1 that didn't want to be there. Like, really, like, there's no motivation to keep going, I think, for them. Like, they have no food, right? So they're already running on empty because they don't have any rice or anything. And then when they do get a reward, it's not worth it. Like, they're not being rewarded in a meaningful way. And so I think they just get, like, the contestants get demoralized way faster. And so then the weak contestants, they're just dropping like flies.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that either Survivor, they need to cast tougher players, which they probably do in this new format, or, I think the better part, and probably a little bit of both, is they need a reason to stay out there more than like, yeah, okay, $1 million is a really good motivation. Like granted, like I would suck it up and do it for $1 million. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll deal with it. But when you're there 24 hours a day, the day-to-day becomes hard if you don't have some change of pace, something to look forward to, something to keep you going, which is why like even like the letters from home challenges are always really cool, or the family visit, which they don't do anymore. And I miss
I
that.
know. I also
Like
miss that a lot.
that is like, it's a thing that keeps people going because they're like, I want to go because I want to do, my dad's coming out here or whatever. I want to play
Mm-hmm.
Survivor with my dad. Like that's keeping me going. Sort of like
Yeah.
that's I think you need more of that in Survivor because sure, $1 million is really big motivation, but when you're there on the island, I imagine it's harder. Like it's harder than just thinking $1 million. I mean, you're in it, you're living it. Obviously, neither of us have ever been on Survivor, so we can't speak to that from experience. Maybe we can get some people on the podcast in the future and ask them that. But that would be my theory, is that, I mean, it's just harder to think about the money when you're on the island, when
Yeah.
you're so deep in strategy and you're hungry. It's
Yeah.
about day-to-day motivation instead of large-scale motivation.
I think another issue with the modern Survivor rewards is the fact that they don't get them as frequently either. Since they're out there for 26 days, but they have to do the same amount of immunity challenges in a shorter time. They're doing they have to do all the immunity challenges, and that just doesn't leave a lot of room for reward
Mhm.
challenges.
Yeah, there's
In
less.
the seasons where they had 39 days, they would do almost every single episode was a reward challenge, immunity challenge, reward challenge, immunity challenge.
Mhm.
And so now they've lumped them together where sometimes they'll do just a reward challenge and then the immunity challenge, but a lot of the times it's for reward and immunity,
Mhm.
which to me is not the way it should be. You shouldn't the people who immunity is the reward. That should be the
Yeah.
reward. You shouldn't be rewarded beyond immunity, because then the other tribes are just getting demoralized even more. They're getting demoralized that they didn't win immunity and they have to go to tribal council, which is already punishment enough. And then they're getting punished beyond the fact that
Mhm.
they didn't win any sort of reward.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and that's something where, like, a tribe that, okay, maybe they lose immunity and they have to go to tribal council, but they could, if they won the reward, a day or two before, or they win the next reward, even if they're not winning the immunity, like that's enough to keep them going and them not go back to back immunities,
Yeah.
or go back to back tribals. And so that could, I think that also probably totally plays a factor in people being demoralized, is that, it's just tribal after we saw that with Lulu and Tika the last 2 seasons. It's just tribal after tribal after tribal after tribal. There's no mix up because they're just getting kicked while they're already down.
Yeah.
And there's no room for them to recover from a morale standpoint, just
Yeah.
at all. It makes it not very fun to watch either. Like too, like it makes it where it's like,
You just
if
sit
you
there and
know they're gonna lose every time, you just start. I mean,
you just feel bad for them.
yeah, it's not. I want to watch competition, right? There's a reason that like in sports, it's really not that fun to watch a blowout unless it's like your team, and
Mhm.
even then you're kind of like, it's kind of boring, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
When
when I go to Gator games, or when I would go to Gator games when I was a student, it's fun for the first 3 touchdowns, and then it gets to a point where I'm just like, yeah, this is just boring. We're just scoring
Yeah.
over and over again, and I want to go home.
Yeah, it's well, and especially when it's like, it's a team that they've paid, $1 million to come and lose, and you're just sitting there beating up on them for 2 hours. It's not that fun. Granted, I mean, sure, it's exciting, you won, cool, but it's like, did you really win? It's not like, it's not a big deal to beat them. And so it's
Yeah.
something where that you see that in Survivor too. It's like, okay, sure, they're beating Tika every single week. They're beating Lulu every single week. Big deal. Like, who cares? You've beat them every week. They're down. You're not. It's not real competition, or it doesn't feel like real competition. And a lot of that could be editing. Like, obviously, we're speaking just from our experience watching the show, but I do think that it makes it not as fun to watch. And I think like we see that a lot on Survivor Twitter too, is that it's hard to watch pre-merge stuff a lot of times because you're just like, it's the same thing kind of over and over and over.
Everyone likes rooting for an underdog. Everyone likes an underdog story, and I think that's also why people really wanted Emily to win last season, and why so many people were rooting for Emily, because she came from a disaster tribe and she was the only Lulu left. But it's hard to root for the Lulu tribe pre-merge because you're just like they're just getting pummeled. It's fun rooting for an underdog when you know they might have a chance, but then it just gets to a point where you're just like, just put them out of their misery or something.
Yeah, it's something where like going back to a sports analogy, I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and this year was not a fun year to watch the Broncos, and it was something where there were a lot of times they're just not playing good, and I go in like not expecting a win. And, you think about this even with like, fans of teams in any sport where they're like perpetually bad every year. They're not expecting greatness. They're hoping for mediocrity. And, you're hoping that things will change long term, but it's not going to happen in a season. And so that's kind of like Survivor's maybe a microcosm of that phenomenon, but it's the same sort of thing where it's like you want the underdog to win, but after a little while, you're like, I mean, I know you're not. You're my favorite, but I can't. What else can I do other than just sit here and wait for you to be put down?
Yeah.
Like, it's like you're just waiting on it. It's where it makes it more rewarding when they do really well, like the Tika 3, and you have Jam Jam, end up winning, and it's like, okay, like it was cool. Like we were able to root for them. They made it the whole way. It was fun. It never lost the joy there, but it was after they made the merge. Pre-merge, It was really hard to root for Tika.
Yeah.
Outside of Carson. I was rooting for Carson the whole time pre-merge, but post-merge, it was really easy to root for all three of them.
So as we're starting to wrap up here, something that we ended our discussion on Outwit was if we had two options and there was no middle ground of season 1 and season 45, if there was no middle ground, would you take what we had in season 1 or would you take what we have now in season 45? Because me personally, I think I would take what we have in 45, and contrary to what we said in Outwit, where we said we would rather have just season 1, bare bones. But personally, I think I would rather have 45, because even though it can have its issues, I think generally most of the time it makes for entertaining television. I think the immunity challenges are leagues above where season 1, and the rewards tend to be not as great, but I think the pros of the immunity challenges outweigh the cons of the reward challenges for me personally, and how it benefits just watching good television. So I personally would rather have what we have in 45.
I agree. And that's where, like, honestly, like if it's all or nothing, right? If I can't, because realistically, like I want, like the challenges in 45 are better challenges by a mile, by a lot, because it's just a better product. It's a better show.
Yeah.
And it literally, the only thing I think that season 1 does better is the actual reward part of it. Not even like the reward challenge isn't even different. And so that's not even like an outplay portion of the game. That's just a mechanic of the production. So that's where, like, if we're saying like the outplay, which one we prefer, I agree. I think it's what we have now is far better. It has evolved a lot over, almost a quarter of a century of time, multiple decades. It has evolved, and I would say probably been pretty close to perfected in the way that they do challenges. There are very few challenges that that we watch now and we leave it feeling like that challenge kind of sucked. Like, not the way the performance went, but like the challenge itself. Like they have whole teams of people that just make challenges and test challenges, and it's way more advanced than what they were doing in season 1. I don't think it's even a competition at all. So I
Hmm.
would say, yeah, I absolutely prefer what we have now. Do I wish we had better rewards? Absolutely. Do I wish we had some more trivia stuff thrown in there? Do I want them to bring back would I love them to bring back the eating challenge, which we didn't even talk about from
Yeah.
season 1? Yeah, I would love that. But at the end of the day, I'd rather watch season 45's challenges for the next 10 years than watch season 1's. It's just more
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, cool. I think I would say the very last thing before we wrap, because I think it falls into this, is I think we have to mention, we kind of mentioned it before earlier, though, is like how much, and maybe we'll do a whole episode on Jeff as well, but how much the production of challenges has changed
Hmm.
to Modern Survivor. And I just want to, we don't have to discuss it or dive into it, but I think it bears mentioning and is worth noting that the show, and especially Jeff, have improved so much since
Yeah.
season 1 that it's so incredibly impressive. But like season 1, there's no commentary, there's none of this, and it was something that I didn't appreciate before going back and watching season 1 again. Is
Hmm.
that like a lot of times I feel like I get really annoyed with Jeff, and I feel like, bro, you're talking too much.
Yeah.
But when you go compare it to the opposite, where he's not talking at
Not
all,
talking. Yeah.
it was so hard to follow what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I prefer what we have now. Like, do I think he doesn't have to say everything? Yeah, sure. But it kind of comes down to personal preference at that point. But it's infinitely better in the new
Hmm.
seasons where you can follow the challenges. Obviously, they're filmed better. Obviously, they're more thought out and all this. But I do want to just like acknowledge and commend like the show and production and Jeff for, you know, I don't know at what point they make that transition. I'm really interested to see that as we watch the seasons. Like, when does he start commentating and how much? I'm
And
really
he
curious,
even
especially in the next season. But he got
it's
really good at it as the seasons have gone on. Apparently.
yeah, and it started to come out there at the end. He would start to
Mm-hmm.
say things every once in a while. He definitely wasn't commentating the whole time, but he would
Mm-hmm.
definitely start to say things and commentate a little bit. And so I think it was
Yeah.
starting to come out. So I'm interested to see to what level it is taken in season 2 and how much it changes just between that time frame. But yeah, and I think also even beyond just production, the explanation of challenges where he explains how the challenges ran and they show people where you don't see their face. You just they show them running the challenge. I think that's a really nice aspect of just
Yeah.
watching the show
Yeah. They got
because
really good at that now.
a lot of the times I would just be like, well, I don't even know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it was very confusing as a viewer. I'm sure they explained it great to the contestants because they all did it fine, but
Hmm.
it was something that it was clear that they're out there filming this, and then they get back in the editing room and they're doing the best that they can. So I'm
Yeah.
really curious to see the changes that they make, and that's where we're going to move here into season 2 very shortly to see what changes they make immediately in terms of like, all right, when they're filming, do they have parts of the edit in mind? And so I'm really interested to see that. And I think like one something that probably led to Jeff not being able to commentate is most of the challenges are happening like away from him. He just wasn't there seeing it and present. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see at what point the challenges become more like localized to like, all right, we're playing in this field sort of thing, instead of
Hmm.
like, all right, go run out in the jungle with the camera. Like it's just different now. So I'm really interested to see how the challenges evolve and grow over the seasons. I think they have improved. Now I'm interested to see where they take those steps. And I think this is going to be a thing we'll be able to keep coming back to over the next, weeks and months as we're watching through all the seasons of Survivor and see how they evolve, how they grow, where iconic challenges have their first appearance. I'm really excited to see all that sort of stuff. I think
Yeah.
there's going to be a
Me
lot of
too.
cool things to come. But do you have anything else before we're done here today? We've been talking, we're at our hour mark and talk about challenges a lot. You have anything else that you got left that you want to leave this on?
No, not that I can think of. I think we covered all the bases.
Sweet. Cool. Well, thank you if you've been listening to this. We really appreciate it. We want you to let us know. There's a little poll if you're listening on Spotify. You can let us know what you think, what you want us to talk about. Feedback on the podcast is great and always appreciated. We're just, like we've said before, we're two friends watching through all the seasons of Survivor. and we're looking to document that journey, specifically, for people who maybe don't have the time to watch all the seasons, or have seen them and don't want to watch them again, but want to relive the golden days. So we're going back through them. I'm excited. We're about to get into season 2 of Survivor, but before that, we've got one last little episode that we're going to record where we're talking about the outlasting portion of Survivor, talking about like the survival aspect of Survivor. And that's something that's really excited to us, because that's changed a lot over the years. And even in the last 5 years, it's changed a lot in Survivor. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with that. That being said, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Idle Talk Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Idle Talk Podcast, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Clearly, you already found us and you're listening to us. We appreciate it. Thank you, and we hope that you have a great day. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening. Bye.